So why this subject? Why today? I like obstacle courses. I watch obstacle course shows, and I was watching Beastmaster and I saw this competitor. This is a female. She goes through all of this time in the fluff piece at the beginning of the show, bragging about how tough she is. Then when she does the obstacle, she gets cut. And what happens the moment she sees her blood? She completely falls apart. All that bravado went right out the window and she fell apart. And no, she was not able to complete the course. She did not make it to the next obstacle. When she finally got up enough courage after bawling for over a minute to make an attempt at the next obstacle, she fell into the water hazard and then got out and cried again. And this is a reflection on preppers, period, because there are too many of them out there that have no experience. They're not tough. They're all talk. And they're just people that own a lot of stuff. They have a lot of supplies. They have a lot of fancy guns. But when push comes to shove, they really don't know what they're doing. And this brings me to Doomsday Preppers. I watched this show. Unfortunately, the show is more of a showcase of what not to do than it is of what to do. I watched it originally thinking, okay, it's a prepper show, that ought to be interesting, but it was more examples of how not to be and how not to act and what not to do, which is still a lesson in of itself. So that brings me to these two, Tim and Steve. And you all know Tim now famously as the crying prepper. He's the one that they make fun of so much on YouTube because of his blubbering. I don't have all the footage here, but I can show you enough of it for you to get the point if you haven't seen this before. Basically, Tim and his prepper buddy Steve are in an elevated position. They're shooting at explosives on the ground as an exercise. Tim fires first. Then it's Steve's turn to fire. But Tim, and it's hard to notice here, and I'll point this out, does not have his hearing protection on. You can see it on the left side of his head, but not on the right. He's got his right muff open. He pulled it back and forgot to replace it. The concussion from shooting in an enclosed area, that's a lot on your ears. He wasn't prepared for that. He spent the next hour crying. He got down to the ground, he cried, he threw up, he cried. They called an ambulance for him. His hearing restored very shortly. If you've been in a situation where you've been near a concussion like that, you know it'll knock your hearing out for a little bit. But that wasn't enough for him. An hour later, they're sitting there and he's throwing Steve out of his prepper group because Steve fired. He said it's his fault. He shouldn't have fired in there, all this other crap. But Tim told him to do it. Tim brought him up there to shoot. Steve called out that he was going to fire. Tim didn't have his hearing protection on and blamed Steve for the problem and is still crying about it. Not only that, but some footage that you don't see that was at the very beginning of this particular video. Him and his family actually drew down on Steve when they pulled up to his ranch in a so-called surprise exercise, which is some really stupid crap. What if Steve overreacted and fired back? Then you'd have a mess. Steve and Tim are a couple of guys that have no idea what they're doing. Tim in particular, at least Steve is loyal, or was before he got thrown out. Steve you can work with. Tim, you can't. He thinks he knows everything. He doesn't. He's just a guy that owns a bunch of stuff. He's got a lot of money. He's got a big ranch. He owns a bunch of guns, and he thinks that makes him freaking Rambo, and he isn't. Obviously, if he's going to cry because of the concussion from a shot inside of an enclosed area, which is something that most people, especially if they've been around guns all their life like he claims he was, should have experienced at least once and had an idea of what that's like. Then you have this guy, and I'm sure you all remember him. He's the guy that shot his own thumb on Doomsday Preppers and claimed it was a misfire. It wasn't a misfire, it was poor safety. He shot his own thumb because he wasn't paying attention to what he was doing. Then, when they bandaged him up, as soon as he looked at it and saw the blood, he passes clean out. This is not the guy I want next to me in a trench. However, this is a guy that has his own company where he sells prepping supplies. Just because he sells stuff, just because he owns a lot of stuff, it doesn't make him a prepper. And like I said, this was just inspired by me seeing, I believe her name was Natalie, on the Beastmaster obstacle course show, just go to pieces after running her mouth about how tough she was. And it reminded me of preppers. There's a lot of preppers out there that talk and talk and talk, but they cannot walk the walk. They never did. They own a lot of stuff, and they read a bunch of articles and watched a few videos, and they think they know what they're doing and they don't. These are some of the worst people to be paired up with. Just throwing out my 2 cents. What do you think about that, folks? If you got an opinion on it, go ahead and put it in the comment section below. I'd love to see it. Please do like, share, and subscribe. It's how you keep the channel alive. YouTube does not like prepper channels. They sanction almost every video we put out. So please, again, a thumbs up would be appreciated. Please do share the video if you got anything out of it. And don't forget to subscribe if you have not already. And if you are, remember to hit that notifications button. And once again, stay frosty, folks, and thanks for watching.